watching again, they can see you. Okay, so it's recording, guys, you're recording. Okay, whenever you're ready, guys, introduce yourselves as well, please.
Hi, my name is Minh, and
I'm Quan.
and today we'll be presenting about the falsity in the arts and the sciences and how it can create new knowledge.
So the central idea of our presentation today is falsity in arts and science can establish new knowledge. So first we're going to take a look at what our own definition of falsity is. In this presentation, falsity is any statement or facts that are not scientifically or just proven in general and is not supported with evidence. And we are going to look at falsity from two perspectives. One is the perspective of falsity in the arts, and the other is falsity in the sciences, which may also be known as assumptions or hypotheses. So to begin with, we have a short video to show. The screen is visible.
I want to start by doing an experiment. I'm going to play 3 videos of a rainy day, but I've replaced the audio of one of the videos, and instead of the sound of rain, I've added the sound of bacon frying. So I want you to think carefully which one the clip with the bacon is. Alright? So actually, I lied. They're all bacon. My point here isn't really to make you hungry every time you see a rainy scene, but it's to show that our brains are conditioned to embrace the lies. We're not looking for accuracy. So, on the subject of deception, I wanted to quote one of my favorite authors. In The Decay of the Art of Lying, Oscar Wilde establishes the idea that all bad art comes from copying nature and being realistic. And all great art comes from lying and deceiving and telling beautiful, untrue things.
So this TED Talk is by Mr.
Tesos Rentals.
And we're going to talk a bit about how this relates with our real situation.
And so this TED Talk, which was in Athens, Greece, it talks about how film and deception can correlate, and basically the deception is specifically focused on cinematography, and so the deception here is deceiving our audiences through sound, and not every sound you hear inside a film is actually authentic within the footage recorded, and most of the time in movies or TV shows, all of the sounds are added later on during the post-production stage, or what we could call the editing process. And so the sound, which is used to deceive the audiences, has a purpose to evoke emotions within our audiences, and also it is used to create a more authentic feeling for an audience.
So a bit about the perspective. So the perspective of producers when making films, or directors who choose to create these sounds that relate to film, their goal is to express their creativity, but also show to audiences how these sound deceptions can actually exaggerate or contribute to an exaggeration of the real world, and show how even with these sound deceptions, there can still be some truth in it, which brings us to our primary knowledge question. To what extent can falsity be effective and useful in establishing new knowledge? So regarding this, our TED Talk, our real life situation, like Minh said before, the falsity is the sound deceptions that sound editors use, and this established knowledge that audiences or viewers of the film may have is, for example, any inferences or any understanding that they may have of the film after they hear this sound. So, for example, a small example
is a gunshot within a scene. So if we hear a gunshot, we would immediately assume that someone in that footage or in that scene has a gun in their possession. And so the new knowledge created from this assumption is that a character has a gun with them. And we are able to create this new knowledge from hearing sound, which is a gunshot.
And this is effective because this can reveal certain plot points within the movie, such as if you hear a gunshot, then you would usually infer that something dangerous is about to happen, and that is how this false knowledge is effective and useful for viewers of movies specifically, which we then move on to our first claim, which is falsity may be incorporated within the arts and provides valid knowledge. So we take a look at visual arts and not film, and how visual arts sometimes use false knowledge as a way to correlate with one of the three theories of art, which are art as an imitation and art as a method of communication. So with these two theories, we see that certain movies or pieces of art want to replicate the real world and bring as much realistic characteristics of the real world into their art. But then there are some, for example, there are some which follow the third theory of art, which is to express their creativity, and because of that, they tend to be able to express much more creativity in their work, and usually at the same time they use false knowledge. So Ming's going to talk about that example in this picture.
So this image here is our first real-life stitching of artwork used as creativity, which is also false knowledge. And so advertisements usually use the method of deception, and by deceiving our audiences to gain more attention. And so this is a bus in Copenhagen in Denmark, which is a popular tourist site. And as you can see on the bus, it says zoo, the wildest place in town. And that has one purpose, is to attract tourists to go visit their local zoo, but also to gain and benefit for their local economy. And so this was in 2009, and they purposely put a big snake wrapped around the whole bus, and with exaggeration they showed that the bus is being crushed into pieces by a snake. And so this is to emphasize on the slogan, the wildest place in town. And Quan will be talking about the perspectives.
So as Ming mentioned a bit before, the perspectives, we have two perspectives in seeing this advertisement, either as the producer or the creator of this advertisement. The producers and creators are both commercially and financially benefited because they gain more traction from this type of advertisement. As for the consumers, which in this situation is the viewers of this advertisement, they are more enticed towards this type of advertisement and more inclined to go to the zoo. And for some quotes are from a writer for the Star online newspaper reports that some Copenhagen commuters refuse to get on a snake bus because they believe that this snake is actually real. And in other cases, some Japanese tourists were so enticed with this advertisement that they completely ignored their tour guide and instead just wanted to take photos of this advertisement. So it is true that sometimes an exaggeration or using false knowledge may be beneficial and effective and useful, but there are also times when it can actually have the adverse effect and actually be harmful towards both viewers and the producers of the advertisements. And Ming's going to talk about our counterclaim to this take,
which is there are times when falsity in the arts remain untrue and are harmful towards some. And so by this counterclaim, what I mean is that establishing knowledge within falsity, audiences may be misled, or instead of creating credible and valid knowledge, their inference may result in false knowledge altogether, and this can follow up with mistakes being made or deception. And our next real life example is the Red Bull case, and this is about their slogan. And in 2014, the company's slogan was "Red Bull gives you wings." And oddly enough, there were customers or consumers who actually believed their slogans, and this was initially kind of benefit the company, but they weren't actually able to benefit the slogan instead, which led to several major consequences later on. So I'll show you an ad from the Red Bull website.
Red Bull gives you wings.
So this ad is taken from the Red Bull cartoon series from their website. And as you can see, this visually represents the idea of Red Bull giving you wings. However, they want to emphasize that idea by saying that the guy who drank the can of Red Bull actually gains wings very quickly, and by the purpose of getting his revenge on the bird which laid its waste on him, he already gained wings and he could fly. And so that's a real life situation where Red Bull used the slogan "Red Bull can give you wings." And this moved on to the consequence of them having to face a lawsuit. And the company settled the class action case by agreeing to pay out a maximum of $13 million, including $10 to every U.S. consumer who had bought their drink since 2002. And that was referenced from Business Insider. And this false knowledge was not meant to harm their customers, but it was meant to be metaphorical, yet it was interpreted differently.
So now we're going to move on to our second primary claim, and it's that policy can act on the basis to discover new knowledge. So this mostly deals with the natural science area of knowledge. And a quote from a psychology journal by two psychologists: "The power of an experiment is only as strong as the clarity of the basic assumptions which underlie it," which basically shows that assumptions and hypotheses, even though they are false knowledge, even though they do not have definite support to show that it is valid, it is still fundamental in science, or both sciences, to discover new knowledge. So I'm going to talk a bit about a chemistry experiment or ways of finding knowledge. So in thermodynamic chemistry, there's a concept called change of enthalpy, which basically measures the change of heat content within a system through a reaction. And there are two primary ways to measure change of enthalpy. One is theoretical, using average bond enthalpy, and the other is much more practical, which is an experiment conducted called calorimetry, which measures the energy change within the reaction. So with this calorimetry experiment, what happens is you get a field such as methanol, and you put it in this spirit burner right here. The fuel is then burned, and then the heat is released to the water in this beaker, and the energy is in the beaker is recorded, and thus scientists can deduce the change of enthalpy. But as you can probably guess, there are a few assumptions that have to go with this experiment to show that, to act as its foundation. The primary assumption is that all the heat that is released from this flame here will transfer into the water beaker. But as you can see, that's not actually true, because this heat can disperse around the beaker itself, which means that there will be some heat loss in this experiment. Also, there's also the assumption that the beaker itself, which is made of glass, doesn't actually conduct the heat that is transferred, but as you may or may not know, it's actually not true, and the beaker actually does absorb some of the energy as it is made out of glass. So that shows that, and after that, the scientists can use the change of temperature in the water to calculate the change of enthalpy. So that shows that even though with these assumptions and these false knowledge that science used to standardize an experiment, even though it's false knowledge, it can still result in information or results that are true. But a counterclaim to that may be new knowledge created as a result of false knowledge may not necessarily be true. So the other method of finding a change of enthalpy is simply using average bond enthalpies, which are values that are given in the data booklet that students can use. And essentially, they just give the value of heat content within a bond. But as I said, this is only average values, and what that means is that these two compounds here both have a carbon-oxygen double bond, but the heat content is different, so scientists have to average that value, which means that the real values may deviate from the actual average values, and because of that, the result or information that is created may actually not be true and true to the experiment. So to conclude, we say that understanding falsity having a role in establishing knowledge shows that there are situations where false knowledge is very much essential for growth, but at the same time, there will be times where falsity produces untruthful knowledges, and we also have some limitations to our claims. For example, our first one where falsity is useful and effective in the arts, especially in the film example, there is a limitation to that, and that's the time limitation. The knowledge that is created is only valid until proven otherwise. So going back to Ming's example of the gunshot, if someone fires a gun in a movie, then you automatically assume, or if audience hear a sound of a gunshot in a movie, then audiences assume that there is a gun that is going to appear. But if audiences are revealed that that sound is actually just someone hitting a piece of metal, then the knowledge that you made of there being a gun is actually false. And that shows that with false knowledge, it may either create true and valid knowledge, or it may also create false knowledge. Thank you. These are our suggestions. Yeah.